Welcome all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. I am your man and resident Redskins fan, Lou. Thank you for joining me here on the Redskins Report. Special Redskins Report coming at you. A thorough breakdown of the 2017 NFL Draft, Louie T style, as only your man Louie T can. Going to break down every single one of the 10 selections the Redskins made in the 2017 NFL Draft. I'm going to do it as quickly as I possibly can. And so I just want to jump out. Let's first say this before we get into this draft. I love this draft by the Redskins. I think this is one of their better drafts over the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years. And we haven't had many great drafts, so I'm putting a lot of stock into some of these players. The thing I like about this draft as well, Redskins kind of went out on a limb in this draft. This wasn't a safe draft as we've seen over the last probably 5 to 7 years, where the Redskins take a lot of safe guys, good character guys, guys that aren't coming off of injuries. This was a draft where they took some guys that were rough around the edges a little bit, some guys that may have gotten into a little bit of trouble off the field, some guys that are coming off some injuries. Look, I love the fact that the Redskins are rolling the dice here with some players coming off of injuries, some guys that have a little bit of a checkered past, because in this league, you're not going to win with a ton of Boy Scouts. It's just generally not how it goes. You need tough guys. You need guys rough around the edges. You got to roll the dice. Scared money don't make money. I say it all the time. If you want to win in this league, you got to be willing to go out on a limb at some point. Not all the time, but you do need to go and color outside the lines a little bit. And the Redskins, I felt like, did that in this draft. That being said, I think the Redskins got a lot of talented football players. How will they perform at the next level? We don't know the answer to that, but if you go off the college tape, we got a lot of good football players. Let's jump into this draft. We start in the first round, 17th overall selection. Defensive lineman out of Alabama, Jonathan Allen was the pick, and to all of our surprise, he was on the board, and we were all elated when the Redskins made this selection. I'm not going to break him down because I've already done that in the Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Jonathan Allen, go to that video in my series in the playlist for the NFL Draft and the Draft Prospects 101 series. So all I will say is, we got ourselves a hell of a football player at a position of desperate need for the Redskins, despite going out in free agency and picking up a couple of defensive linemen, one from the Cowboys, one from the Raiders, Stacy McGee and Terrell McClain. That was still a huge position of need. Neither one of those guys to me strike me as a game changer. Jonathan Allen can be that for us. We needed a guy that could be a disruptor, someone that could get pressure from the defensive line. We now have that guy in Jonathan Allen. Feel good about what he brings to the table. A lot of teams were scared off by the shoulder. Not the Redskins. Love the fact that they were willing to take that chance, and I think it's going to pay off huge dividends for us as a football team. Let's move on to the second selection in this draft for the Redskins. In the second round, 49th overall selection. We go back to the Alabama store once again, this time plucking outside linebacker Ryan Anderson and making him a Washington Redskin. And let's talk about this guy because I wasn't elated with this pick when we made it. I'm here to tell you, I'm still not overjoyed, okay, by this pick, but I do think he's the type of player you need on your football team. You need guys like Ryan Anderson on your football team. I just would have loved to have taken another player here and still had an opportunity, because I think he would have still been there, to get Ryan Anderson in the third round. That being said, I'm not here to cry over spilt milk. We made the selection in the second round. Let's talk about him. 6'2", 253 pounds. So you start with his size as the first pro, and I think that's a great size for an outside linebacker. It means he can set a physical edge in the run game, is able to be not only physical in the run game, but be a guy that can also use that physicality to get to the quarterback with a bull rush, and you will see him do that on tape from time to time. This is a guy that is very strong. Start at the point of attack. Those are two pros that I think with that 6'2", 253-pound frame, you get out of Ryan Anderson. Toughness. This guy is rugged. I like his toughness and the ruggedness that he brings to the table. He's a rough, tough, and just a nasty football player. The type of guy you need. You watch him on tape. There's a couple of games I'm watching him. He's getting blocked. And at the end of the play, just for no reason other than he's just physical, nasty, and has a nasty disposition about him, he just takes the offensive lineman that's blocking him and just throws him on the ground. Just jacks him up quickly and then throws him on the ground like, get off me. Okay, play's over, play's done. He's not impacting the play, but it's just that physicality, that ruggedness, that little edge that you want your defensive players to have that Ryan Anderson has that I think we're lacking. We're a nice football team. Teams feel good about playing the Redskins defensively because we don't have tough, mean guys. We have a bunch of nice guys like Ryan Kerrigan. He's a nice, wholesome young man. We need tough, rough around the edges types of guys. I think Ryan Anderson is that kind of football player. Also, he's disciplined and aware. For as tough and as rugged as he is, he's very smart on the football field. You need smart football players. How many times have we seen play action fake be bid on by Preston Smith, Ryan Kerrigan, and Trent Murphy, where the edge is wide open because they bid that? The Dallas Cowboys play us every year, twice a year, and the first play they run is play action fake, and Ryan Kerrigan falls for the banana in the tailpipe every single time, and the backside is wide open. Either Dak Prescott can run, or he can throw it to a wide-ass open Jason Witten or whomever is at goddamn tight end position. It's a joke. This is a guy that's not going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe. He's going to stay at home. He's very aware. He's sound in his principles. Again, when you come from a Nick Saban coached defense, you're going to be very sound in what you do, and you see that on tape with Ryan Anderson. Relentlessness. This is a guy that doesn't give up on any given snap. This is a guy that is going to rush. Initially, he's going to rush a second time. He's going to rush a third time. He's going to try to get involved in the play somehow. He goes sideline to sideline. Doesn't necessarily have the speed to go sideline to sideline. But if a guy's juking and ducking and dodging and other players are making him have to make cuts and stops and things of that nature, Ryan Anderson's coming from the backside and he's coming in relentless pursuit. He's going to get there eventually. And again, I always say, better late to the party than never showing up at all. And he's one of those guys, relentless, going to find a way to get to that party come hell or high water. You look at the next pro, initial burst. Off the snap, he's got a very quick burst. Again, not the greatest athlete in the world. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But his initial burst off the snap gives him an opportunity to win. And when you couple it with the next pro, hand usage. Okay, this guy is a certified karate black belt. And I don't mean that literally. I'm talking figuratively as a guy that can use his hands. I talked about Jonathan Allen in the draft Prospects 101 series and how this guy was a master hand karate fighter. And this is the same thing you get out of Ryan Anderson. It's not at the same level as a Jonathan Allen, but you can tell the players at Alabama are coached to use their hands well. And you can see that it translates to the football field, and you get it again here with Ryan. It's not, to me, it's not a coincidence that Jonathan Allen has the best hands in the draft to me, and Ryan Anderson isn't that far behind in terms of hand usage. He's not a great athlete, so you ask yourself, how does he win off the edge with a burst when he's not a great athlete? Because he knows how to combine the two. A quick burst followed by good hand usage, and boom, just like that, you beat the tackle, and now all you got to do is find a way to get to the quarterback, and he does that exceptionally well. Pleases my viewing when I see a guy like that doing what he needs to do to find a way to get to the quarterback. Now, again, I said during the draft that I felt like he was a Kerrigan, a Preston Smith, and a Trent Murphy type, and I still feel that way. We'll get to why I feel that way a little bit later on. But nonetheless, his hands are outstanding in terms of being able to fight at the line of scrimmage with offensive linemen. Versatility. This is a guy that can line up in a two-point stance with his hand out of the dirt. This is a guy that can line up in a three-point stand. I saw him line up as a defensive end, as a four-tech, right over the tackle. I've seen him line up shaded just slightly outside of the tackle as a five-tech. So I've seen this guy line up in a number of different ways. Saw him standing up as an outside linebacker. So this guy has versatility. They moved him all over, left side, right side. He even blitzed from the middle of the field at Alabama. So this is a guy that they trust to put in a number of different situations. And like I said, smart football player, can digest a lot. And so you expect him to be able to come in, assimilate himself well to a very porous Washington Redskins defense. And finally, he's a playmaker. And you say what you want, and I was very critical, hypercritical of him at Alabama for not being a great athlete. Like I said, we'll talk about that here in a second. But nonetheless, he's a playmaker. And there's something to be said for a guy that just finds his way around the football. Whether it's a sack off of second effort, third effort, doesn't matter. You still got to the quarterback. Whether it's a guy that's making a pick like he did against Washington in the playoff game. and ran it back for a touchdown, whether it's a guy that's around the football, forcing a fumble, recovering a fumble. He's just a playmaker. He's a guy that just has a nose and a knack for being around the action and sometimes even getting involved in what's going on, whether it's a pick six or deflecting a football that gets picked off. He seems to be around the action and making plays. So that's something you got to love. And again, I know it's an aggressive, very talented Alabama defense. Everybody usually gets involved in the playmaking there at Alabama defensively, but still you got to go out and make plays. And Ryan Anderson did that while at Alabama. Let's get to his cons and talk about why I wasn't that huge on this pick. And let's talk about that. Limited athlete. That's why I compared him to Ryan Kerrigan and Preston Smith and Trent Murphy. I think he's a limited athlete. I think he's a guy similar to Kerrigan that doesn't bend well, is not going to be able to duck around the edge and bend the track, as we like to say. He's not going to run the track and bend that corner. He's not going to do anything. He's not going to be a game changer. He's not going to be what we all thought Junior Galette was going to be 2 years ago, even last year to a certain degree. He's not a guy that is going to beat the tackle initially off the line of scrimmage, and then when that tackle tries to recover and push him around the pocket, bend at that 45-degree angle, dip the shoulder, get around the edge, and get to the quarterback. That's not Ryan Anderson. That's not his DNA makeup. He's not an athlete like that. He's not able to bend. He's not flexible at the hip. None of that. Just like Kerrigan. Stiff athlete. Same thing here with Ryan Anderson. Same thing with Preston Smith. Same thing with Trent Murphy. So he's a limited athlete. He can drop into coverage. Saw him do it. Picked off a pass against Washington, like I said. Ran it back for a touchdown. He can drop into coverage, but he's limited as an athlete. So be careful what you ask him to do out in space because, again, he's not the greatest athlete. Limited move Rolodex is the next con. Here's a guy that, to me, when he gets to the quarterback, it's off of one move and one move alone. The initial burst, it's a speed rush up the field with hand usage that gets the tackle's hands out of the way, gets him off balance, and allows Anderson to shoot around the corner, get to the quarterback. Generally, when he wins with quickness and hand usage. There is no spin. There is no hard outside, back inside. There's no counter to that speed to the outside. Either he wins with it or he doesn't. So there's no moves that he brings to the table. And I think that's something that he's going to have to work on at the next level because you're not going to beat tackles with just running up the field, especially when you're not an explosive Justin Houston, Von Miller type-esque pass rusher. He doesn't possess Khalil Mack power in his hands. He doesn't possess Justin Houston or Von Miller explosive first step. You don't have an elite trait. You better have a bunch of moves to get that tackle thinking, okay, what is he going to throw at me next? You don't get that out of Ryan Anderson. He's just a run up the field, use my hands, and see if I can win type of guy. And if that doesn't work, generally you got him. He's a stalemate on that particular play. So I don't think that he's going to come in and change the game for us. Yeah, like I said, he'll get 4.5, he'll get 5, he'll get 6 sacks, which is great. But it's not what we were looking for at that point in the draft, at least not what I was looking for at that point. I was looking for a dynamic pass rusher that was going to come in here and potentially get double-digit sacks and be explosive while doing so, scare the other team, scare the draws off of them. That's not what Ryan Anderson is going to do in my estimation, but we will see. And finally, he was a one-year starter at Alabama. So for all of the good things that he did this past season, he was a great backup last year, but he was a one-year starter. And again, a lot of talent at Alabama. So you don't want to beat him up for not starting his entire career. But that being said, if he was good enough, he would have been on the field like a Jonathan Allen, who was on the field a ton for Alabama over the life of his career. He would have been on the field a lot more had he been more talented. It is what it is. Bottom line, one-year starter. I'm not going to beat him up for it. Bottom line is Ryan Anderson, good football player. Don't think he was great. Don't think he was worthy of a second-round pick. That being said, he's going to come in and immediately help this Redskins defense. To what extent? That's the question that I have. I'm not questioning, can this guy play football? I'm questioning to what extent is he going to make our defense better, especially on 3rd and 7, where the Redskins struggled last year. 3rd and 7 or more, the Redskins were the worst defense in NFL history last season. Is he going to help in that situation? I have my doubts. I'm going to reserve judgment. However, Ryan Anderson, good football player. Is he great? Was he worthy of a second-round pick? That is to be determined. Let's move on to the next selection for the Redskins. 3rd round, 81st overall selection. UCLA cornerback Fabian Moreau. Love guys like Moreau who have size, 206 pounds, 6 feet tall. That's the first pro. Great size, great length. This is a guy that comes in with long arms, a good size at the cornerback position. You want that in this new day and age in the NFL with all these big, long, rangy receivers that can run. You want a guy that's running fast. You want a guy that's long, that can jump, that's physical, and Moreau checks all of those boxes. Speaking of which, athleticism is the next pro. 4.35 40. I thought he was ultra impressive at the combine. That's when he first jumped on my radar. 4.35 40, 38-inch vert, 11.3 broad. The guy was outstanding at the combine. His movement skills were fluid. You could tell that this guy had an ex-running back type of background because he just looked very fluid in transition, moving his hips and getting out of his back pedal, all of that stuff at the combine. So I was very impressed. The next pro, his plant and drive is outstanding. No wasted motion. There's a pick against USC. I believe it's against USC. Don't quote me on that, but there's a pick where he drives on the football. Now I want to say it was USC where they're running a slant and he's all over it. He has a bead on it. He sees what's going on and he jumps that slant route and takes it away from the receiver, runs the route right for the receiver essentially. And that's all plant and drive. That's all play diagnosis and recognition and making a play on the football. Great hands to snatch it out of the air and take it the other way. So you'll see that from him. Plant and drive is really good. There are some things that he lacks in that same motion that allows him to get beat from time to time. But when he is decisive, makes up his mind, sticks his foot in the ground, and decides to change direction, he's very fluid in doing so. You go to his next pro, downfield aggressiveness. I think he does a really good job of battling down the field at the point of catch. He will get himself into trouble. He will be a little handsy, but I'm not going to beat him up for that because I love the way he competes down the field for the football. He's very aggressive. He does look, and let's go to the next pro because I think this is really important. He's an LLCer, and no, he's not a business owner. What an LLC is for me is a guy that will look, locate, and contest the football. To me, as a corner, you got to be an LLCer if you're going to exceed the level that you played at the collegiate level. If you're going to make it as an NFL pro, you're going to have to look, find the football. So look, locate. So look back, because a lot of guys panic when the ball's in the air. They don't know where it is because they don't look. All right, they just know ball's coming, and the guy's got to step on me. I'm gonna panic. I'm gonna start flailing my arms. I'm gonna run into him. I'm gonna start grabbing him. Pass interference. That's what you're trying to get in college. It's only 15 yards, so you can get away with that. And at the next level, that could be a 55-yard pass interference penalty. You gotta look, then locate ball. Maybe the ball is underthrown and it's coming right to you. Gotta locate football. So look, locate, and then contest. Maybe the ball is on the money, but if you contest at the last second, maybe you swipe down on the arm and the ball comes free and it's incomplete. Maybe you're able to get a pinky on the football, change the trajectory of the football, knock it away, incomplete. Maybe you're able to tip the ball, safeties in heavy pursuit. Boom, ball caroms into the air, tip drill, pick for the safety because you made a play. You gotta look, locate, contest. Fabian Moreau does that. Love that about him. His next pro, man-to-man coverage, does a great job in man-to-man coverage of, I think, running with the receiver, staying in his hip pocket, battling down the field. Talked about his aggressiveness down the field, making sure that receiver doesn't do a great job of stacking him and keeping him on that back hip. Does a really good job of staying right where he needs to be to contest the football. I think he does a really good job in man-to-man coverage. And really what you'll see when you watch him on tape is he only plays in really 2 coverages. Man-to-man, which I love, and cover 3, which you see a lot of in the NFL, and the Redskins have been a team that has run a lot of cover 3 in the past. So he's going to be comfortable in those 2 sets. How comfortable is he in cover 2? How comfortable is he in cover 4? How comfortable is he in some different looks? I don't know because I didn't see it. I just saw a lot of man-to-man and a lot of cover 3, which was fine by me. You go to his next pro. Upside is his final pro. This is a guy to me that has tremendous upside. He's an ex-running back. So he came to the UCLA campus. He came to UCLA as a running back. And they said, damn, this guy's so athletic. We got backs, okay? We don't need him at running back. We got backs. How about you go to corner, man? Let's try you out at corner. And it worked to perfection. And if not for a couple of injuries, this guy's probably a first-round pick And a lot of people thought he was going to be a first-round pick until his last injury that he sustained very close to the draft. And look, sometimes you need luck in the draft to end up with really good football players. And I think this may be one of those situations where the Redskins lucked up because a guy got injured and it dropped his stock. And the Redskins had a player that shouldn't have been there fall into their lap. And now they got a chance to really sculpt and mold a very talented football player that is very raw at the position. Speaking of which, let's go to his cons. First thing to me is his inability to get off of blocks and be more aggressive in the run game. I want to see this guy be, you're 206 pounds, you're a physical guy. I want to see you use that physicality to get receivers off of you. Too many receivers had success blocking him in the run game and and UCLA gave up a ton of big runs in the run game. And a lot of those reasons why is because guys in the secondary weren't taking good angles and weren't getting off of blocks. Fabian Moreau included in that. He did not get off of blocks well enough for me. He did not show and flash in the run game enough for me. He wasn't aggressive enough. I felt like, was too content with being blocked on plays. I want to see him be more aggressive, shed those blocks, get into the play, make plays closer to the line of scrimmage. Also, to me, he's experienced and raw. He dealt with a couple of injuries that we're going to talk about here in a second that didn't allow him to play. You're talking about a guy that is coming over from the running back position. So again, not someone that's been playing the cornerback position his entire life. Guy got to college and missed a season and a half due to injuries. And so, or at least a full season, I should say, basically due to an injury. So you're talking about a guy that only played the cornerback position essentially 2 years while at UCLA. I'd love to see him get some more experience. So really inexperienced, really raw, but at UCLA, this guy was legit. They would throw away from him. When you watch the tape, they were throwing away from him for good reason because he was a really good football player. You would see the football travel on the other side of the field wherever Moreau was not more times than where he was. And finally, to me, this is the biggest reason why we got him. One, where we got him, and two, the biggest concern as a Redskins fan that you should have about Fabian Moreau is his injury history. In 2015, Liz Frank injury with the foot, missed basically that entire season. And again, that's why I talked about the inexperience factor here with Fabian Moreau. And also in 2017, this guy had a chance to be a first-round pick. I don't think he was going to go in the first round, but I think he would have went in the second round for sure. And then he tears his pec muscle while lifting weights at the pro day. And just like that, you go from a fringe first to a definite second to now all of a sudden the Redskins find a gem fall into their lap in the third round in Fabian Moreau. And so that pec tear could be huge because remember, Brian Orakpo had the same injury and he did it multiple times while with the Redskins. So it's one of those injuries that you hit it at the wrong angle and boom, it's torn again. Hopefully that's not a reoccurring issue here for Fabian Moreau because I think we got ourselves a damn good athlete that can turn into a hell of a football player if you ask me. Let's go to the next pick, fourth round, 114th overall selection, Oklahoma running back Sam Aj Piran. I've been calling him Samaje for the longest time. His mom named him Sam to keep the Sam name in the family. So it's Sam Aj Piran, not Samaje. Sam Aj Piran. Nonetheless, this guy's a hell of a football player. Let's talk about this guy. And I talked about him before the college football season started as one of the backs that I thought was going to help this be one of the best running back draft classes that we potentially have ever seen. And this is one of those guys that I think could be a game changer for the Redskins at a position of need. Redskins knocking down a number of positions of need early in this draft. Let's talk about him. 5'11", 233 pounds. He's a grown man. My favorite story to tell about Sam Aj Piran is when he first came to the Oklahoma campus for a visit. One of the coaches asked him, so whose father are you? We all know the guy that in high school, while everybody else is just getting a little bit of whiskers on their face, starting to grow and go through puberty and starting to mature, you've got the one guy that in the 10th grade's got a full-blown mustache, sideburns, and he's got a receding hairline, and he looks like he's 33 years old in high school in the 10th grade while everybody else is still baby-faced. Samaje Piran was that guy, and so the coach said, whose dad are you? And he's like, bro, I'm 18 and I'm Sam Aj Piran. I'm here to play running back at Oklahoma. He's like, really. And not only did he have the look, but his body he was already 230 pounds when he showed up at 18 years old. This guy was a grown man already. So the frame really hasn't changed. 5'11", 233. It's a beautiful frame. He's a big, physical, solid, well-built running back. And his strength, 30 reps of 2 1/4, speaks for itself. And you see it play out on the football field. So size and strength, to me, jump off the screen when talking about Samaje Perine. Tough in between the tackles. I think the Redskins have lacked that kind of physicality where it's a 2-yard run, but somehow it ends up being 4 yards. We've had some tippy-toe runners like Matt Jones. Who? Matt Jones. And I love what we got out of Tulane running back last year that came onto the scene towards the end of the season. In fact, Rob Kelly. But Rob Kelly was a guy that was learning the running back position because at Tulane he played in a read option type of offense, didn't have a lot of under center handoffs where he had to set a mark and actually press the hole and all of those good things. So it was all new for him as well. I think with a guy like Samaje Perine, tough in between the tackles, going to stick his foot in the ground and go much faster than slow, going to get what's there, going to finish off runs with a level of physicality that we haven't seen since AM. Wake up, wake up, wake up. It's Alpha Morris. And when he was getting it done in 2012 and 2013. So we're going to see that come back to the Redskins with Samaje Perine at the running back position, because this guy is a tough physical runner in between the tackles, and he finishes every run. This isn't a guy that's running out of bounds. He's going to turn back into the field of play and lower his shoulder and pick up an extra 2 yards. That's the type of runner that Samaje Perine is. Solid vision. I think he has a really good feel for when he needs to cut it back. He sees cutback lanes and has the ability to see that linebacker over pursuing, stick his foot in the ground, and cut it back. So I think he has really solid vision. I don't think it's top notch, but I think it's a good enough vision to excel in the Redskins run game. Presses holes well. And what I mean by that is when you get the football, you have to run laterally before you can take it up the field vertically. Before you can get north and south, you have to go east and west to get the defense to flow. And once you get them to flow, you set up blocks, and maybe that linebacker that's supposed to fill into a specific gap over pursues. That's called pressing the hole. You press it until sometimes you can't press it any longer. Then you stick your foot in the ground and you make that cut and you get up the field. He does a really good job of pressing the hole until something becomes available. A lot of guys will just put their head down, and we've seen this with Redskin running backs, put their head down to nowhere, to no gain, to 1 yard loss, instead of pressing the hole and allowing something to develop and then hitting it. They don't do that. That's what you get out of Samaje Perine. Yaxter. A lot of this guy's yards after contact comes just off of sheer physicality. He's not going to dance and make anybody miss. He's not juking the draws off of anybody. He's just physical. If you come with an arm tackle, then you're not trying to make a tackle, because this is a big, physical, 233-pound grown-ass man we're talking about here. If you think you're going to come with a half-assed arm tackle or a shoulder, I've seen this guy bounce off of so many shoulder attempts. It's not even funny. If you want to see this guy on full display in terms of him just bouncing off of defenders, go turn on his freshman year tape against Kansas, where he set the college football record for most rushing yards a week after it was set by then Wisconsin running back Melvin Gordon III. And the very next week, Samaje Perine smashes it with over 432 yards or so versus Kansas, and it was wet that day. And those are the types of days you don't want to see a guy like Samaje Perine, because that's the type of day where guys don't want to tackle. It's cold, it's wet, he's physical, and if you're coming with a shoulder, he's just going to bounce off of you. If you're coming with a half-assed arm tackle, he's just going to drape that arm off, get off of me, and keep it moving. So this is a guy that I love the fact that he's just a guy that gets yards after contact. And if you don't come with a hard hat and a lunch pail, you're not going to get him onto the turf. Solid hands. I think the misconception and misnomer here is that he can't catch because Joe Mixon did a lot of heavy lifting in the receiving game out of the backfield. But yes, Samaje Perine can catch the football. And so if you throw it to him, he's a guy that I think can win in the screen game. I think he's a guy that can catch it out of the backfield. And so you don't have to necessarily take him out of the game on third downs. But Redskins have a back in Chris Thompson that can do that. So I'm just looking for him to come in and do heavy lifting on first and second down. But it doesn't have to be predictable anymore where, hey, he's in the game, so they got to be running because he's not a great pass protector. He's not a great receiver. He can do a little bit of both. So I feel comfortable with him being in the game all 3 downs if necessary. He will block. And there were a number of dual back sets where he and Joe Mixon were in the backfield at the same time, and he would actually be the lead blocker for Joe Mixon on certain plays. So he's a guy that will stick his nose in there. He will hit a linebacker. He will hit a defensive lineman. He's not afraid. He's very physical. Love the fact that he'll block and protect the quarterback if need be. And also, he's got a nose for the end zone, something Redskin running backs haven't had over the last, let's call it 7 years or so. Since Clinton Portis, we haven't had backs that can find the end zone. I don't want to go that far back because AM, when we were in our heyday running the football under Mike Shanahan, he would find the end zone quite a bit year in and year out. So I take that back. Since AM, we haven't had backs who were really adept at getting in the end zone at the 2-yard line and finding a way in the end zone despite contact at the 1. This is a guy that 51 career touchdowns at OU, including 21 in his freshman year. This is the type of guy you want because around the end zone, he's going to find a way in. He's so tough to bring down. He's got a nose for the end zone. Love that about Samaje Perine. Let's go to his cons. He lacks home run hitting, speed, and the ability to make guys miss at the 2nd and 3rd level because of a lack of agility. So he's not going to make anybody miss. I already said that before. Let me reiterate that. Not going to make anybody miss with nimble feet or juke moves. If he makes someone miss, it's because they came with a feeble attempt at a tackle and he just broke the tackle because he's a physical runner. But 4.65 40, he's going to hit a ton of doubles, a few triples, not going to hit many home runs. That's just not what his speed allows him to do. And finally, injury history. Missed 3 games with a leg muscle pull in 2016, and throughout his career at OU dealt with a myriad of ankle injuries. So that's just something to keep an eye on. Didn't miss a ton of games because of it, but it did hamper his availability during the course of certain games. So this is something to keep an eye on. But with Samaje Perine added to the stable of backs that we already have, feel comfortable that he's going to come in. I really wanted a big home run threat type of back like a Joe Williams. Redskins didn't see that as a guy that was viable for the football team. That's fine. Love Samaje Perine. Think he's going to come in and help boost the Redskins run game immediately with his presence. Let's go on to the next pick. Another 4th rounder. This time, Redskins go on the defensive side of the football. 123rd overall selection. Michigan State defensive back Monte Nicholson is the pick. 6'2", 212 pounds. Height, weight, speed specimen is the first pro. This is a guy that at the combine knocked my socks off. 4'4", 240. He looked so good out in the underwear Olympics, but that's where my infatuation for him starts and ends because the tape says something totally different to me. The first 5 picks, the most disappointing one is the one that I'm discussing with you right now. Let's talk about him though. Can cover a lot of ground quickly. This is a guy in high school, track athlete, phenomenal range. Eats up a ton of ground with long strides. So you'll see this guy come down from 15 yards away from the line of scrimmage and get involved in a tackle. And you say, wow, that was impressive because he can move really well. Also, versatility. I saw him in the slot more than a few times on tape. So not only is he a safety that can come down, well, not necessarily come down, but a guy that can play 30 yards away, but he can also drop over the slot and play someone's slot receiver. I don't know how well, but there was a play on a speed out that he was able to get over there and be right where he needed to be to knock the football away. So he can offer a little bit of versatility in that department. Has some ball skills. He makes some plays on the football. He can go up and get the ball. Like I said, a really good athlete, looked good at the combine. When there's no physical contact, this guy's gonna stand out because he's a track guy and he can run really fast. So he looks good, 6'2", 212, great frame, good speed, all of that, all those boxes are checked. It's when you actually start playing football and the physical aspect kicks in where this guy worries me. Speaking of which, let's get to his cons. To me, the first thing I put in my notes watching him, the very first thing I put in my notes, too goddamn passive. Okay, he is too content with playing the free safety position, really doesn't want to get up and get involved in making any tackles, doesn't want to be physical at all. I wrote down in my notes, play doesn't match his size. I wrote it in big bold letters in my notes because that's the first thing that jumped off the screen to me. I don't see this guy coming down and run support aggressively. I don't see him coming down and being a physical force. I see this guy standing around a bunch of piles. There's a play, and I don't remember what game it was. There's a play though, the 3rd down and 1. And if he comes up and fills like he's supposed to, they don't get the first down. So there's a couple of Michigan State defenders that initially grabbed the running back on 3rd and 1. And the running back somehow spins out. And if Monte Nicholson would have come down and come to the outside where he should have been and filled, that running back wouldn't have been able to spin to the outside and pick up that extra yard and get the first down because Monte Nicholson would have been there to clean it up and it would have been no gain, 4th down, and one big decision for the team. They're going to either have to punt or go for it. Instead, guy rolls over and no Monte Nicholson because he's standing around the pile watching, 1st down. And that's what I'm talking about. Lacks aggressiveness. To me, his size doesn't match his play on the football field. He wants no part of physicality when it comes to being a safety. Lacks spatial awareness. And what I mean by that is he's one of those guys that as a center fielder, he's out in the middle of the field and he'll start getting caught up in watching route combinations or looking at the quarterback, and all of a sudden he's drifted up 5 to 7 yards and now all the action is behind him and he has no clue what's going on. And then next thing you know, someone's getting hit over the top for a big play and you're like, Monte, what the hell were you doing? And he's just drifting. He's just drifting in the field and really not aware of where he is on the field. Spatial awareness is key, especially when you're a single high free safety. You better know where the hell you are on the field and know what's going on around you. That backside post shouldn't be able to get hit over your head for a 55-yard gain or a touchdown because you drifted up and just were in the middle of no man's land. And you'll see that with him on tape where he's just kind of just floating around in the secondary like, bro, what are you doing? What's your responsibility? Do you know what's going on around you? Sometimes I question that with Monte Nicholson. And finally, he'll miss tackles. He's not a great tackler. He doesn't want to tackle. He's not physical enough. And then to make matters worse, he's not a great tackler when he does finally decide, I'm going to go up there and try to help. Not a great tackler at all. So there's a lot of things I don't like. I'm going to tell you right now, this guy, bruh, you better be able to play some special teams. Because if you don't, there's actually another safety in this draft that the Redskins spent a 7th round pick on that I would much rather take a chance on than this guy, because at least I know that guy will come up and hit you in your mouth. This guy, I don't know about him. He's very passive, and as a last line of defense, please, Lord, don't have him be the last defender back there to stop a 13-yard run from turning into a 37-yard run and a touchdown, because that thing is going out the back gate for a touchdown with Monte Nicholson as the last line of defense. Let's go on to the next pick, and it's in the 5th round. The only 5th round pick the Redskins had. 154th pick overall. Arkansas tight end Jeremy Sprinkle. Sprinkle me, bitch. Sprinkle me is the next pick. Love this guy. I talked about the tight end position being one of the greatest before the college football season in one of my college football series videos, and he was included in that group of tight ends that I thought could change the game. Now, he didn't have as big a season as he was projected to have, but I still thought that despite not getting a ton of targets and not getting the football a bunch and being asked to block a lot more with a young quarterback, I thought he still showed the ability to do all the things that I saw on tape from him last year when I was scouting a guy like Hunter Henry or Alex Collins, the running back out of Arkansas, or Jonathan Williams, the other Arkansas running back that was drafted last year. There was a ton of Arkansas offensive players, and Sprinkle was the guy that jumped off the tape at me last year. So I expected a lot out of him, and what I saw was a guy that didn't really fall off, just didn't get as many attempts as I thought he would in the pass game. And again, when you become the #1 tight end target, last year he was the #2 behind Hunter Henry, who went in the 2nd round, first tight end off the board to the San Diego Chargers a season ago. You're going to get some open looks. Now you're the guy, you're the #1 tight end. Teams are going to try to take you away, so it's a little different. But 6'5", 252 pounds. That's the first pro. He's got outstanding size and length for the position. That length comes in handy not only as a receiver, but also in the blocking department. Speaking of which, outstanding blocker is the next pro. To me, Jeremy Sprinkle, one of the best blocking tight ends in this draft. One of the better two-way tight ends in this draft, because he can run, he can catch it, and he can block. Is he the greatest athlete like some of the guys at the top of the draft, like a O.J. Howard, or Evan Ingram, David Njoku? No, but what he does bring to the table is a guy that can block better than most of those guys outside of O.J. Howard, and he still offers you the ability to catch it and make things happen after the catch. Natural pass catching ability. That's something else you get from him. He's got really soft hands, going to catch the football generally when it's in his vicinity. And so he's a guy that you feel comfortable. If you're running bootleg and he leaks out into the flat, feel comfortable throwing him the football. If he's running a stop route 6 yards over the middle of the field and you got to force it into a tight window, you feel comfortable doing that to him because you feel like he's going to catch the football. If he's running a corner route and there's a safety coming down hard looking to get the football out at the last second, he's a guy that you feel comfortable forcing that football to because he's going to come down with it. Natural hands catching ability for Jeremy Sprinkle. Tremendous catch radius. I talked about the length. This is a guy with long arms at 6'5", gives you a great catching radius. And we need that. We need guys with size. We don't have enough of that with this football team. And over the years, Pierre Garçon, great receiver. Deshaun Jackson, great receiver. Neither one of those guys offer great size. Jamison Crowder, great receiver, doesn't offer us a bunch of size. The best size that we had was essentially Jordan Reed. And if you want to throw in the young rookie out of Cal last year, that started to get some reps at the end of the season. Again, what are we talking about here? This is a guy at 6'5" that can go up, get the football, make some plays. So he's going to give you that ability. And speaking of which, red zone target is another pro for him. A guy that in the red zone at 6'5", you can just throw it up to and say, hey, big fella, go get it. Go make a play for me. So I love that about him as well. Formational flexibility. You can move this guy around. You can flex him out. They did that at Arkansas where they flex him out into the slot or out wide to be a target. They also had him in line as a traditional inline blocking tight end, which he does extremely well. They detached him from the line as a U. He was in the backfield as an H-back at times. So this is a guy with tremendous formational flexibility. Love that about most of the tight ends in this draft, and Jeremy Sprinkle included. Let's get to his cons. Not a great route runner and lacks short area quickness. So what that means is he's not going to separate by running great routes because he's not a great route runner. He rounds off a lot of routes, and I think that had something to do with his lack of targets as well. And also, he doesn't have great short area quickness, so he's not winning with great route running ability, and he's not going to separate with just sheer quickness like a Jordan Reed who's going to double stick you and then give you a shoulder fake and then boom, he's gone. Or even Vernon Davis, who's not the greatest route runner in the world, but because he's so quick, he can still separate. Jeremy Sprinkle doesn't have either of those things. So he's going to have to win with deception. He's going to block, and then he's going to fake, and he's going to get out into the flat. Or he's going to fake a block because he's been blocking for the last 7 plays, and all of a sudden he goes to fake, and now you're expecting him to block you, and he leaks out into the flats. That's how he's going to win. He's going to be the third option, the second option on a play, not going to be paid much attention to. He's going to leak out into a seam route and be wide open. That's where he's going to hurt teams, not necessarily just off of running a route and being the primary target on a play. And finally, he missed the final game of his collegiate career, the bowl game, for shoplifting. It gave him a gift card essentially to go to Belk. They were playing in the Belk Bowl. And they gave him a belt card that might have been worth, let's say, $300 or $400. Maybe there was $500 worth of merchandise that he wanted, but only had $400 to spend. And he said, they won't miss this extra $100 worth of merchandise. Got popped for shoplifting. It's some immature stuff. You hope that doesn't happen in the future, but it was worth mentioning. But at the end of the day, love this selection. Think he's going to help the Redskins tremendously. We don't have a blocking tight end on our roster right now. Now we do with Jeremy Sprinkle. Sprinkle me, bitch. Sprinkle me. You go on to the next pick. Redskins had 2 6th-round picks. We start with the first of those two, 199th overall, Wyoming offensive lineman Chase Roulier is the pick. 6'4", 312 pounds is the first pro. His size gives you the ability to play the center position and have the girth necessary, but also be able to kick over the guard if necessary, which is another one of his pros, versatility. He can play both the center and guard position. He was outstanding at guard for Wyoming his first couple of years. Then they said, hey man, we need you at center. He said, cool, go ahead, I got you. Moved over to center and was outstanding for them there as well. He's got some power. He does a really good job, and I think his power comes from his technique. He's very technically sound. To me, he has a good base and leverage. He comes off the football with a good leverage base that allows him to come up and drive guys back in the run game, but also sustain in the pass game and hold up and anchor down. So to me, he's a really good blocker. He sustains, has good power, good movement, generates movement in the run game. All of those things I think you get with Chase Roulier. Adequate movement skills. Is he the best athlete? No. But he has adequate enough movement skills to work on that double team and then get to the second level. If you're running a screen, he's adequate enough as an athlete to get out in front of that screen and get a guy. So is he the greatest athlete? No. Is he going to be mistaken for Zach? Is he going to be mistaken for Zach Martin of the Cowboys? No. But what he will do is he will get out there and do his job. And I think he'll fit right in with the Redskins offensive line in terms of guys and athleticism. Can he get to the second level? I already mentioned that. He's good on double teams. I already mentioned that. Those are also pros that I think he brings to the table. I talked about him playing with great leverage and also having versatility. And to me, this is the biggest key because we've had some injuries with guys in the interior like a Sean Laval who hasn't been able to stay healthy. He has really good durability. 48 consecutive starts at Wyoming. We need a guy that can come in and even if he's not starting, be able to provide us with some depth in the interior of our offensive line. I think he's going to be able to compete and eventually start either at center or guard for this football team. I really like this. And in the 6th round, I think this is some really good value because what I saw was a guy that's going to compete, a guy that's going to give us an opportunity. I think I like him more so as a center, less of a guard, but we'll talk about why I don't like him as much as a guard and more of a center here in a second. But I think this guy can play both positions. And I think we could actually use a guy at center and kick Spencer Long over the guard where he might be better suited to play. But let's talk about his cons before we move on. Short arms and slow feet. And that's part of the reason why I think he's better at center. The length required, which is why he could never play tackle because he doesn't have long enough arms. But even taking a step further at guard, you still want guys to have a little bit of length. You don't want defensive tackles getting into their body and driving them back and collapsing the pocket. So you move him over to center where you're not going to have a guy usually lined up right over him and he's able to help on double teams instead of having an actual blocking assignment on a specific play. So I like that about him at center more so than at guard where he's going to be asked to block a guy in front of him that may have length, be able to get up under his shoulder pads and drive him backwards because he doesn't have long enough arms. Slow feet. And this is where you run into the issue of getting to a reach block. He's not going to reach that reach block. They call it a reach block because it's tough. You got to find a way to get in front of that defensive lineman and cut him off and turn that guy and not let him get in front of you. He's not going to reach that reach block. His feet are too slow. So like I said, I like him better at center and also awareness on twists and stunts. At the center position, I thought he struggled with this, especially watching him against San Diego State. They were running some twists and stunts and some blitzes up the middle. He struggled to pick those up. I thought he was a little slow in diagnosing, which was half the battle there. If you don't see it coming fast enough and you got slow feet, those two don't mesh well. And there were times where he'd be stuck on a double team. Oh, they're coming with a twist and stunt. Oh, it's too late. That stunt has already gotten past him. He can't recover. Now the quarterback's got to bail out of the pocket and try to make something happen. Luckily enough for him, talented quarterback, Josh Allen, he's going to be a stud and a name to watch out for moving forward. Was able to get out of the pocket and make plays. But again, short arms and slow feet, twist and stunt awareness, little lacking behind, but that's not something you can't fix at the next level. Just needs to be a little bit more aware of what teams are doing schematically and what they're trying to do to you so that you can make the proper adjustment to combat that. So, like this pick a lot. Feel like this guy's got value to potentially start, but even if I think as a 6th round pick, there's no guarantees to make a roster. I think this guy's going to not only make this Redskins roster, but I think he's going to have a chance to compete to start with this Redskins football team. So moving on to the other 6th round pick, 209th overall, Georgia State wide receiver Robert Davis. This is a big height, weight, speed specimen. That's the first pro at 6'3", 219 pounds, running a 4.44 40. That 4.44 Moses Malone 40. This is a guy that can pick him up and put him down. And with that kind of size, he gives himself an opportunity to not only make an NFL roster, but have an impact in this league. As we know, the bigger receivers, the faster receivers are the guys getting opportunities to make a statement in this league. And then Robert Davis checks all of those boxes. So from that standpoint, right away, he catches and grabs your attention. I actually thought he had a hell of a day at the Combine and was one of the guys that I put a little note by. Didn't know much about him, knew he went to a smaller school at Georgia State, and so I wasn't expecting a ton out of him. Sun Belt Conference guy. Didn't know what to expect, but again, huge production at college. We'll get to that in a second, but that size and his ability to run and his ability to catch the football throughout the day at the Combine really caught my attention. So I did have prior knowledge of him going into this selection. Acceleration and burst is the next pro. There's times where you see him catch the football and just take off on guys. And he's a straight line speed guy. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But if you give him an opportunity to build up some speed and run in a straight line, good luck catching him. He's got that kind of ability. And there are a couple of catches on tape where you see him and you're like, oh, he's starting to get going. And, you know, I watched him, the game that was the most impressive to me, big competition at Camp Randall versus Wisconsin, number 8 team in the nation. And Georgia State was going toe-to-toe with those guys. And the biggest reason why is because of guys like Robert Davis having a big day. Thought that was one of his most impressive games of 2016 and arguably of his career. There were bigger stat days against lesser competition to go on the road against the number 8 team in the nation and put up the type of day that he had with a young quarterback at Georgia State. That was phenomenal to almost have a chance to win that game. They were leading in the fourth quarter of that ball game, and Robert Davis was a huge reason why. I thought he was phenomenal versus Wisconsin, and that's upper echelon talent there. And so I thought he went out, he competed his ass off and gave them a chance to win, had a touchdown grab, had some big catch and runs in that game. He looked good, like a guy that could potentially be able to get it done at the next level. And you saw some acceleration and burst on some hitches where he caught it, had a couple of blockers out in front. You saw him turn it up, and you're like, if he can make one guy miss, which that's not something he does, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But if he can make a guy miss, he can be off to the races. This is a guy, large catch radius is the next pro. You saw it in that Wisconsin game. You saw it throughout his career, the ability to go up and make a play on the football, really good catch radius, good hands. I talked about that as something that stood out at the Combine. You saw it again on tape. He does a really good job of catching the football with his hands, with his body. He can catch the football from a number of different angles. Felt good about him catching the ball. I think he's got really good hands. I don't think they're great hands necessarily. I don't think he's catching it in traffic with a guy draped all over him. But he's got good hands and he can make some contested catches. Tracks the ball well. This is probably the biggest trait that I see with him that is going to help him adjust and assimilate well at the NFL level. Is in that Wisconsin game, there were some tough catches where he had to track it over the shoulder. You don't see the football because there's a defender in your face kind of shielding your visibility. Last second, the football shows up in your visibility and boom, you're able to snag it. The touchdown grab was beautiful. Used that frame, pushed off a little bit, but you got to be able to do that. Be physical at the point of catch, which is the next pro. So I'll go ahead and lump it in. Got to be physical at the point of catch. Ball coming, receiver, corners draped all over. You got to be able to separate and get him off of you, make a play on the ball. He was able to back shoulder the football, get his foot down, get the touchdown. There's another catch down the sideline. Don't know how he caught this. Don't know how the quarterback even got it in there. The corner is draped all over him. There's not a lot of window there for that football to get into, yet he finds a way to give the quarterback enough leeway to the sideline to drop the football over the outside shoulder with the defender there. Beautiful throw and catch. Really, really impressive. So tracks the football very well when it is in the air. He's got bloodlines. His cousin is Carolina Panthers linebacker Thomas Davis, who was tweeting his ass off during the Combine. Look at my cousin is killing it. So he's got bloodlines. That always helps as well, and that probably speaks to why he's so goddamn fast. Probably runs in the family. He's willing to block. He's a big guy, 6'3", 219. He's willing to go out there and get his hands dirty. I'd like to see him be a little bit more physical and more aggressive, but he's physical enough. I think he could take it to another level, though. He's definitely willing to block. And his collegiate production was really good at Georgia State. Over 3,300 yards receiving, 17 career touchdowns. So he was a guy that got it done at Georgia State. Again, against lesser competition in the Sun Belt Conference. Don't care. Dominate the competition. And for a span of 4 years, Robert Davis did essentially that. You go to his cons. He needs to become a better route runner. They didn't run a ton of routes at Georgia State. A lot of hitches, some slants, some go routes. There wasn't a bunch of diversity in what they were asking him to do. And I think because of that, he's not that great of a route runner. There's a lot of rounded off routes. He does not, this is the one thing that I wrote down in my notes, he does not come back to the football enough. There are too many times where I see him make a catch a little bit tougher than it needs to be because he didn't come back to the football. And that will give an experienced, good corner an opportunity to come in there and either get the football or knock it away. And so there were a number of times where I'm like, hey, bro, you're living dangerous. You need to come back and help your quarterback in that situation. Come back to the ball. He's not doing that. So he needs to work on his route running ability. And then to me, he's limited agility wise. So when you see him get yards after the catch, a lot of it comes from some blocking down the field. It's a play that's scripted for him to get yards after the catch, i.e. a hitch or a bubble screen or a wide receiver screen where there's blockers out in front, or he's catching a slant and he's catching it in stride. And so he's already at a dead sprint and he can accelerate away from the corner who he's got to step on and already, because he's at top speed, run away from a safety that he may have an angle on as well. So you don't see him making guys miss with agility. He doesn't have any moves out in space. He's a straight line speed guy. And I've referenced that earlier, like Ted Ginn Jr. Ted Ginn's not making anybody miss out in space. He's one of those guys, puts his head down and he turns into a track star, runs in a straight line, hard to keep up with him. But if you make him change directions, he's got to de-accelerate and essentially almost come to a complete stop to change directions. And that's what you get out of Robert Davis. He's not a guy that's going to make you miss or change directions fluidly. He's a straight line speed guy, and it takes him a couple of steps, 4, 5, 6 steps to build up that top speed. But once he gets going, he's a tough guy to catch because he can run really, really fast in a straight line. But this is one of those guys, I don't foresee him making the roster in year one. But what I do see him doing is getting on this practice squad if no other team snatches him up. As a height, weight, speed specimen, as a guy that I see with some ability down the line, I think he's someone that could crack this roster down the line. But initially, I don't see him helping his Redskins team unless he is an outstanding special teams player, one that you cannot afford to put on the practice squad. But I just don't see that coming out of Robert Davis. I see this guy being someone that will be a prime candidate to make the practice squad when it's all said and done. You go to the next pick, and we have 2 7th rounders, and the first of which is 230th pick overall, Louisville defensive back Josh Harvey Clemens. And this is a guy that is ultra intriguing, even more so than the 4th round pick of Monte Nicholson. Now, this is a guy that, if not for some off the field issues, probably isn't even a 7th round pick because he's an interesting specimen. And let's start with his pros. At 6'4", 217, his length and size are off the charts. When you see this guy, he looks like a basketball player. Okay, he looks the part of a 2 guard or a 3 in the NBA because he's just got such length. They would go goo goo gaga over him in the NBA because he's so long. His wingspan would drive scouts nuts in the NBA because this guy's got 35 3/8 inch arms, okay? Yikes. That's left tackle arms in the NFL. Those are the guys that we say have vines for arms at the tackle position, yet this is a safety we're talking about who's 6'4", 217. So there's no wonder why this guy was one of the most heavily recruited linebackers out of high school, because this guy is uber athletic and he's extremely long. His DNA makeup in terms of length is insane, and along with that size at 6'4", this guy has great size and length. You go to his next pro, physicality. All right, there's an aggressive mentality. He plays with a level of physicality, but it's the mentality more so than anything else that is impressive. He wants to come down and be a physical defender in the box. He wants to get involved in the tackle. He will come down and be aggressive. He will get involved in the run game. He's not afraid. He's not shying away from contact. He's not an observer, okay? He's not standing around the pile and watching the action take place like Monte Nicholson. He's getting in the fray. He wants to be a part of that. It's a mindset. As a safety, you gotta want to be able to hit. And he wants to do that. I love that about him, which is why I'm willing to go on out on a limb for Josh Harvey Clemens before I am Monte Nicholson. Monte Nicholson is an unwilling participant. And so I'd much rather side with a guy who has the mental makeup of someone who wants to get involved with the play and be physical, and that's Josh Harvey Clemens. Tackles well. And there were a number of times where this guy came and took some poor angles, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but still made the damn tackle just because he's so long and he's willing. And even if he had to dive at the last second, and these tackles aren't pretty, okay? But at the end of the day, who gives a shit as long as you get the job done? I don't care that you grab the guy by the last piece of his shoelace and that's what got him on the ground. I don't care that you got him by the ankle barely, but you got him down, right? Right, that's all I care about, okay? He's diving, he's lunging at guys, but he's getting them on the ground. That's all I care about. Moves well in space. You can tell that, A, he's got the mentality of an ex-linebacker, which is what he was in high school, coming into college football, and even played a lot of linebacker his first year at the University of Georgia. So you can tell that he's got that mentality, but you can tell he moves well in space. So he's not afraid to be out 25 yards away from the line of scrimmage, a couple of route combinations coming at him. He's not afraid to be out in space. He moves very well, flips his hips, got the length to be able to go and get the football, which is the next pro, has really good ball skills, can make plays on the ball. I watched him against Auburn, first game of the season, not this past year, but the year prior, and he's got 2 interceptions in that game. And so he's got ball skills, go up, make plays on the football. He's got all the things that you're looking for in terms of a guy that can have an impact on the football game. Keys the quarterback's eye as well as the last pro. To me, he's a guy that in that Auburn game, that's how he got the 2 picks. All he did was stare down Jeremy Johnson's eyes. He's a horrible quarterback. Took him right to where the football's going to be, and he made plays. And if you can manipulate him with your eyes, like Deshaun Watson did in 2016, where Josh Harvey Clemens was all over the place and got torched in that game, if you can manipulate him with your eyes, then you can beat him. But if you're going to stare down your target and take him to the football, Josh Harvey Clemens will make you pay, because he does a really good job of reading the quarterback's eyes and using that to take him to the action and where the football is going to be. Speaking of which, let's get to his cons. To me, spatial awareness is the first thing. Much like Monte Nicholson, he has no clue of where he is on the football field. He will get sucked up on play action fake and not even really realize that he's just been sucked up. All right, so fake on the handoff, and he's already taken 2 or 3 steps up towards the line of scrimmage. And then instead of getting back like, oh, play action fake, you got me, he's just kind of wandering and meandering around and just kind of hovering like, hey, guy, there's action taking place behind you. You're supposed to be back there. And next thing you know, there's something happening over his head. Or for instance, in the Clemson game, he's supposed to be checking the tight end who had a field day, Mike Williams. Everybody had a field day on Josh Harvey Clemens. And he's supposed to be checking the big-time tight end at Clemson. And he kind of falls asleep behind the wheel, kind of not really aware of where he is on the field, allows the tight end to run by him. And then he panics, and that's the next pro. He panics when he gets beaten. Again, you're 6'4" with 35-inch arms. Just locate and contest. I talked about that already. Just find the ball, buddy. You're big, you're long, you got a shot. Just find the ball. He doesn't look, he panics. Oh shit, ball's coming. Where is it? I don't know. Start grabbing. That's his first instinct. I gotta start grabbing. And you see it. Jordan Leggett gets behind him. He doesn't know where the ball is. Maybe he can still make a play with that great length that he has. Probably can still make a play on the ball. Doesn't look. Instead decides, I'm gonna tackle Jordan Leggett. I'm gonna tackle Mike Williams. They're not catching this football. First down, pass interference. So he panics when he doesn't know where the ball is and he's beaten on a play. And then finally, we talked about this already, we got one more con before we get to the big one at the end. Takes poor pursuit angles. This is a guy that will come up and just be all over the place. He'll come underneath the play, and like I told you, he'll still make the tackle, but you're like, why are you diving from behind when you had the proper angle to take to make this play out in front of the running back? Because if you're diving from behind, that means you probably have a better shot at missing, and you're supposed to be one of the last lines of defense, so you shouldn't be coming from behind the play. You should be coming from in front of it to cut it off, not coming from behind. He will take some really poor pursuit angles, some really bad angles that will put him in some compromising situations, but his length and his ability to get to the football will give him a chance to bail himself out of some bad situations that he puts himself in by taking poor pursuit angles. Finally, the big elephant in the room, the reason why this guy is a 7th round pick, because the size, the length, his athleticism, all of these things scream mid-round draft pick, 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. But the off-the-field issues, he was dismissed from Georgia, failed multiple drug tests, 3 strikes and you're out policy at Georgia. He had 3 strikes, they kicked him out, and he had to transfer to Louisville, had to sit out a year in 2014, and then played 2 strong years at Louisville in 15 and 16. So this is a guy that, we've seen this before, a habitual offender at the collegiate level. Generally, these guys reoffend. The recidivism rate with these guys is usually pretty high. And so that makes teams nervous. Not going to take a flyer on this guy. There are other talented football players that I could take in the 7th round that don't have a checkered past. Well, this guy does, but I don't have a problem taking a 7th round flyer on a guy that I think could actually make this Redskins roster. We're hurting at safety. All right, just because Sua Cravens moved over, just because we signed DJ Swearinger, doesn't mean the safety position is solved. We're hurting at safety. We don't know what D'Angelo Hall is going to be coming off of his 2nd Achilles tear. This is a position of big need for the Redskins, and Josh Harvey-Clemens is a guy that I'm willing to go out on a limb for and say, this guy deserves a shot with this football team. And finally, our final selection of the 2017 NFL Draft, 7th round, 235th overall selection, Auburn defensive back Joshua Halsey. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this might be the steal of the draft for the Redskins. I'm that impressed with him, and I think teams overlooked him because of some things, and I'll talk about it a little bit later on, but I think teams just overlooked this guy. I don't know why. I mean, even when you go on the NFL.com website and check out his draft profile, there's nothing. They didn't even do a write-up of this guy. And if you go watch the video of them talking about him, which I do from time to time, I don't do it often, but I was just curious as to why there was no write-up. And I went to the video, you could tell they had no clue who this guy really was. And so I just think he's one of those guys that just got caught in the wash in this draft that he doesn't really jump off the screen at you. But if you watch the tape speaks for itself. This guy's ultra impressive. And I'm gonna tell you what, not only do I expect him to make this Redskins roster, he's gonna beat somebody, I don't know who, okay? Because I think we got enough corners to where we don't need a guy like a 7th round pick to make the roster. He's gonna beat somebody out to make this roster. Because if you think about it, you got Josh Norman, you got Vitamin B, you got Fabian Moreau, you got the draft pick in the 3rd round from last year out of Virginia Tech in Fuller. That's 4 corners right there, all right? So you're telling me that's 4 guys. There's got to be at least one more guy that I'm not thinking of, maybe 2, that probably are guys that are probably going to be on this roster. He's got some guys that he's going to have to leap over, but make no mistake about it, all right? Q-Bar is another guy that's on the roster. This guy, I'm telling you right now, if he stays healthy, Joshua Halsey will make this Redskins roster. I'm not talking about practice squad. That's not making a team. That means you got cut and you got brought back. Well, I'm talking about making the final 53-man roster. Now, he may not dress every week as one of the 46 guys that are going to suit up on game day, but this is a guy that I'm talking about that is going to make this Redskins roster. I feel really confident in saying that. I think this guy's a steal in the final round. Let's talk about him. 5'11", 195 pounds. First pro, athleticism. 4.46 40, so the guy can run. And the thing I love about Joshua Halsey the most, he's a feisty competitor. That's the first thing I put in my notes. The first game I put on, first game of the season 2016. They're playing against one of the best receivers in the nation, Mike Williams. Mike Williams eats the Auburn secondary alive. Eats their ass up in the first half. Almost 100 yards receiving on 6 receptions in the first half of the game. None of it on Joshua Halsey. He ate the secondary up of Auburn all game long. None of it on Joshua Halsey. They tried Halsey 3 times in that game. Once was a pick. He picked off Deshaun Watson. One was a contest in the end zone on a jump ball with a guy that had him by 5 inches, and Mike Williams jumped up, contested the football, and there was another play in the end zone. Halsey was having none of it. He's a feisty competitor. I love it. Every tape I put on, he is competing for the football. He wants it better than the receiver in front of him. I love that about Joshua Halsey. LLC. He's an LLCer. Look, locate, contest. He's looking, he's locating, he's contesting the football on every single throw. I love that about Joshua Halsey. He made so many plays where he just knocked the football away just because he was able to look and locate. And then contest. LLC, baby. Make it happen. Joshua Halsey makes it happen. Has ball skills. I watched him pick off Deshaun Watson. I watched him pick off Chad Kelly. I watched him make plays consistently throughout his career at Auburn. Has ball skills. He will tackle. I talked about the feisty competitiveness that he has. That extends to helping in the run game. He will come up. He will stick his nose in there. He will get his hands dirty. And finally, there's versatility here with Joshua Halsey. He will play outside, out wide as a corner. He'll jump into the nickel and play some slot for you if need be. And he can also play safety. I saw him do all 3 things on tape. I feel comfortable with him doing all 3 things. I feel even more comfortable with him outside, which you wouldn't expect from a 5'11", 195 corner. And that used to be perfectly good size. That's not the case anymore, especially when you have a draft where just about every corner is 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" in the draft. 5'11" seems like a shrimp these days, but to me, that's still solid height to go and play outside. And I thought he was his best out wide on some of these other receivers. And so you go from his pros to his cons. He wasn't a full-time starter at Auburn, and he was a 4-year starter. But when you watch the tape, there's a lot of times he's not even on the field, okay? Carlton Davis stays on the field, who was getting torched, it seemed like, all last year. But Joshua Halsey's not on the field. I don't know if that's just them wanting to integrate some of their younger players, some guys that may be a little bit longer or whatever. But to me, Halsey was the best of that group, and yet he wasn't on the field all the time. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why that is, but he just wasn't on the field at all times. That's something that's something that really concerned me. It really bothered me because you don't see top upper echelon corners coming off the field. You know, we didn't talk about Tease Tabor coming off the field or Quincy Wilson coming off the field. We didn't talk about any of the UW or Colorado corners coming off the field. Those guys were on the field, so the Ohio State corners weren't coming off the field. So that's a little alarming, but nonetheless, had a 2015 ACL tear and missed basically all of 2015. And I think that's part of the reason he went under the radar. I just think teams didn't do their homework on Joshua Halsey, because to me, I look at him and I don't see 7th round pick. I see a guy that should have had a flyer taken on him in the 5th, possibly even the 6th round, but not the 7th round, not damn near one of the final 18 picks in the draft. Thought this guy played, his tape spoke to him being a much higher draft pick than what he was. So I think this guy has a legitimate shot at making this Redskins roster. I like Joshua Halsey, and I think Redskins may have gotten themselves a steal in the 7th round. Remember, I said that when it's all said and done. He may not even make this roster, but I feel confident of all of the late round picks, outside of Chase Roulier, who I fully expect to make this roster. I think Joshua Halsey is the next guy that I see. If you're talking 6th and 7th round picks. After Roulier, I see Joshua Halsey as the next guy to make this roster. But that's no here nor there. Bottom line is, this is a really strong Redskins draft. Chock full of guys that I think are going to make this team. You know, the first 4 picks are going to make the team for sure. Allen, Anderson, Moreau, Piron, all going to make this roster. Monte Nicholson, probably going to make this roster. I'm not impressed, okay? But Jeremy Sprinkle, going to make this football team. Chase Roulier, I really feel confident saying he's going to make this team as a 6th round pick. And Joshua Halsey is another guy that I really like. And I'll even take it a step further and say Josh Harvey Clemens has some intrigue to him, has some size and some things you can't teach. He's a guy that's a candidate to make this team as well. So you're talking about 9 out of the 10 prospects that I look at and say easily can make this Redskins football team. It looks like a hell of a draft on paper. We'll see what it turns out to be on the football field. But that's the Redskins 2017 NFL draft in a nutshell. You tell me what you think about this draft. I absolutely love it. The Redskins went out on a limb with some guys with some sketchy past, some guys with some injury concerns, but they're talented football players. It's what you got to do in this league if you want to take it to that next level and have elite talent on your football team. You got to take a risk on some guys that other teams aren't willing to take. Thought the Redskins did that in this draft, and I think it's going to benefit them in the long haul. That's going to do it for your man Louie T here, breaking down the Redskins draft. Remember, I am a Redskins fan, etched in burgundy and gold. My Redskins spirit will never die. Redskins spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Watch the Redskins. Hey, Bruce Allen, I know you probably went with the template left by our good man Scotty Mack, but I must say, golf clap. Job well done. Not in love with the second round pick, but there's time for that pick to win me over. All in all, I say the Redskins had a hell of a 2017 NFL draft. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.